Ok ragazzi, buongiorno. Come ho fatto con Beowulf, vi ho scritto alcune domande, ovviamente sono alcune, voi dovete assolutamente studiare tutto quello che riguarda Chaucer. Queste sono delle possibili domande che ci possono aiutare adesso per fare una specie di revisione e quindi per fare quello che abbiamo fatto durante la lezione. Ok, Geoffrey Chaucer. Ok, what do we know about Chaucer? Ok. Chaucer, we know very little about Chaucer because he lived in a period in which not all the people were registered when they were born. Okay, so we just know that he was probably born approximately in 1343, okay, and he died in 1400. He was born in London, and his family was quite wealthy family because his father was a wine merchant, and moreover Chaucer had the possibility in his life to work with three different kings, and this situation gave him the possibility to meet a lot of important people, to travel, okay, and also to we can say to use his skilled observation of people and their behavior, and this was fundamental for his work, in particular for Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales, if you remember, we defined it as a narrative poem, okay, a long narrative poem. What is a long narrative poem? So how can we define narrative poem? It is a long poetical composition written in verse and telling a story, okay? So differently from, and it is also very long, okay? So differently from a single poem, which is normally short, okay, and concentrated on a single situation, in a long narrative poem, we have a real story, okay? But it is written in verse. We normally listen, and we normally know that Chaucer is considered the father of English literature. Why is that? First of all, he was not the first writer, okay, but he was the first to write in English, using the English language used by common people, common Londoners, while in the previous period, normally the written texts were in French or in Latin, okay? So English language hadn't been used as a language for writing, okay, composition, poetical composition. So he was the first one, and he also included in his poem the middle class, the emerging middle class. So his poem is not about kings or heroes or important knights, okay, but it is just about normal people coming from the middle class, emerging middle class. And is the author that started to use the language, as I've already told you, the English language, the language that is called modern English. Okay, so when he wrote his poem, he used a language which was to become the language, the modern language we nowadays, more or less similar to the one that nowadays we speak, okay? And remember that the English language, if you remember, is divided into three periods, okay? We have from 700 to 1100, we have Old English. From 1100 to 1400, we have Middle English, And from 1450 or 1400, we to nowadays, we have modern English. Okay, so we can say that Geoffrey Chaucer represented the moment of change from Middle English to modern English. What else? The basis of modern English. Okay, let's see. Where did he work and how did his job contribute to the writing of Canterbury Tales? This is another question. Okay, as I told you, he lived and he worked with 3 different kings. Okay, and he also worked as the London at the London custom. Okay, so he had the possibility to meet a lot of people, and as he was a curious man, okay, and very witty and very ironic, he also used his knowledge of people, his new meetings, okay, he had during his period there, to remember and to create the characters we find in the Canterbury Tales. Where is the story set? Okay, we know that he traveled a lot, so he probably was also influenced in the writing of the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, by Boccaccio, okay, and by the Decameron. His story is quite similar, but the setting, okay, the framework is different. Where are we in the Canterbury Tales? The Canterbury Tales is the description of a journey, okay, from London, in particular from the Tabard Inn, where the pilgrims met, to Canterbury, to the shrine of Thomas Becket. The pilgrims are 30. Okay, not 29 pilgrims, and the 30th one is the poet himself. So we have 30 people, including the poet. And all these people meet at the Tabard Inn without knowing each other, okay, themselves. So they are not, they hadn't organized the trip together, the pilgrimage together, but they just met at the Tabard Inn and they decided to travel together. During the journey, as it was a very long journey, because from London to Canterbury they needed some days, okay, a number of days, they decided, because of the suggestion of the Tabard Inn owner, to tell stories, okay, just to spend time, to enjoy the time. 2 stories going there and 2 coming back, each pilgrim. Okay, so the Canterbury Tales should have been composed of 120 stories. But we don't have all these stories because the Canterbury Tales wasn't finished, because Chaucer died before finishing it. Okay, so what we have today is just a few stories if compared to the real number. How is the story, how is the Canterbury Tales organized? We have the poet, the writer, who describes the moment of the year in which the story is set, which is spring, okay? The place where they are at the moment, where they were at the moment, so the Tabard Inn, and then it describes the different pilgrims, the aspect, the physical aspect, the character of the different pilgrims in the general prologue. Then, after the description of the pilgrims, we see every pilgrim telling the story. Okay. For example, we read the story of the merchant. Okay, the merchant's tale. We read the description of the merchant, and we read the description of the wife of Bath. The wife of Bath is a woman, okay? Wife doesn't mean actually moglie, because at that time, wife meant donna, okay? There was an identification between a woman, okay, and a wife. So a woman was indicated with the term wife. We remember that in both descriptions he used an ironic language, an ironic tone, okay, describing the characteristics of the pilgrims, in particular emphasizing, okay, their character, using exaggeration to create irony, okay, because Chaucer created irony using exaggeration, okay, and emphasizing the characteristics and the actions of the pilgrims. Where are they going? They are going, we said, to Canterbury. Why Canterbury? Because in Canterbury we find the shrine, il reliquiario, of Thomas Becket. Who is Thomas Becket? Thomas Becket is the saint and martyr we met while studying Henry II. Okay, the famous Plantagenet king. Okay, the one who made 3 important reforms. Okay, and as Thomas Becket had been killed because of the king, because of the will of the king, he was considered a martyr. Okay, and also nowadays, Canterbury is a place of pilgrimage where a lot of pilgrims go to visit his shrine. There is also a symbolic we can say view of the story. Okay, we know that it is a journey from a city, a normal city, a worldly city, to a city where there is a martyr, a saint. Okay, so this journey can be considered as the symbol, is the metaphor for life, the journey of life. London represents the moment when we start our life, because we are sinners, okay, in the worldly reality, nella realtà mondana, terrena, and through our journey of purification, going on pilgrimage, so during our life, we should arrive to the holy city, okay, which is may be considered after death, paradise, okay. So the place where we have the eternal life, okay, with a Catholic view. Okay, who are the main protagonists? We said that in the story, in this poem, we have people belonging to the middle class, middle class society. So we have merchants, we have churchmen, we have a nun, we have a wife of Bath, okay, we have a knight, okay, so we have many different people belonging to the middle class of the time. We don't find neither noble people nor poor people. Why? because noble people wouldn't have accepted to go on journey, to travel with the middle class, because they considered the middle class a lower social class, while the poor people couldn't afford, okay, non si potevano permettere a pilgrimage because it was very expensive, and to go on pilgrimage they had to leave their house, their work, okay, so they were poor, they couldn't stop working. Okay, as for the merchant and the wife of Bath, you have to, if you want to revise, you can watch again the two videos I posted, okay, for the two different, with the two different explanation. Okay, so you have to tell me what does the author describe, which details, okay, what happens in the description, what do we find, okay, so a very short summary. And then I want you to tell me the story of the merchant, so the merchant's tale, okay, what happens, who is January, who is May, what does January decide to do, okay, what does May do to him, okay, there is a treason, okay, what happens, so very, very briefly, what happens in the story, okay, of the merchant.